Warning, the following episode contains spoilers. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey guys, welcome to Watch Mojo. I am Phoebe, this is Nick, and today we're talking Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 5, titled The Bells.
So this was an action-packed episode. It had a lot of fan service, but may have generated some mixed feelings.
Yeah, and before we get into that, let's just kind of break it down scene by scene, because there's a lot to unpack here. So we start with Daenerys, as we can see right here, looking a little bit haggard. Not looking so great.
Yeah, so Daenerys is feeling increasingly isolated and alone in Dragonstone. She's grieving for essentially her two children. She's also lost Jorah and Missandei. And to make matters worse, her advisors have also now let her down.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this in our breakdown for last episode, that it really feels like the walls are closing in around her. And now we're finally seeing almost like the physical effects of it. Because she's really looking, she's very thin, she hasn't eaten, she has dark circles under her eyes, she's very stressed. And now, you know, she has Tyrion, who is basically one of her most trusted people and the most trusted person that she has left. Coming to her and making a very bad decision and telling her that Varys has been plotting to murder her, essentially.
Yeah, basically revealing that he has gone behind Daenerys' back and told Varys about Jon's true heritage.
Yeah, and we see in a little while that was quite a bad decision on his part. So Varys is kind of unceremoniously executed in this episode, and I think that this is where my kind of gripe with this episode starts. In previous Game of Thrones episodes, when we find out that somebody is plotting against a king or a queen, it's kind of like a season-long thing. Varys was plotting for like 5 minutes and then he was burned to a crisp. Like, I'm sorry, that was just like seriously annoying to me. What did you think?
So I actually didn't mind this moment because I found Tyrion's goodbye to Varys really moving.
Yeah, I feel like Varys' death just kind of became the background soundtrack to Dany's descent into madness. But then again, like Varys is such a good character that it was just like so frustrating to be like, well, I didn't really feel anything when he died because it was just kind of like, you know, there was no build-up.
So things only get worse from Daenerys from this point on, because then she has a scene with Jon in which he turns her down. She's completely alone at this point. She's looking for love and affection. She's still in love with Jon. Jon, I think, is definitely still in love with her, but he turns her down, and that is kind of her defining moment. That's her turning point where she says, okay, well, people follow you out of love. For me, let it be fear.
Yeah, I feel like things really fall apart for her when she realizes that the one person that she, you know, had those romantic feelings for is just sort of saying no and has essentially betrayed her. That's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back.
And it's an interesting question, you know, what would have happened if Jon hadn't turned her down? Would things have gone differently? Would Daenerys still have gone full Mad Queen?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't force someone to love you. And
especially not when it's your aunt. I mean, you can't, yeah.
So now we head to the throne room where in our last episode trailer breakdown, we assumed that it was Tyrion and Varys that Daenerys was addressing, but Varys didn't even make it that far. He was dead within like the first 10 minutes of the episode. So here we have her talking to Grey Worm and Tyrion, and we're sort of seeing her come out of that physical depressive slump and really just, you know, hitting home that she is losing
She's made a decision. She's decided to just go in and attack,
Yeah, and I think that it sort of hits Tyrion when she says, well, you know, we have Jaime, and if you ever betray me again, well, it's going to turn out bad for you.
And you can see on Tyrion's face that he's starting to think, oh, maybe that wasn't the right decision. Maybe I did back the wrong horse.
Yeah, and then you have Varys, like, from heaven being like, I told you so. Yeah, so not looking good for Tyrion.
Now in King's Landing, the battle lines have been drawn, and we see Tyrion go and free his brother Jaime.
This is like a really emotional scene, and I feel like it's a side of Tyrion that we don't often see. He's always kind of been, not comedic relief, but he always has those little quips on hand. But this was just like a really emotional moment for someone who is basically saying goodbye to their best friend and their brother.
Yeah, I thought Peter Dinklage's performance was fantastic in this episode. He had to hit a lot of notes that as Tyrion he doesn't usually hit. Essentially, he was just completely taken aback and uncertain, and we don't usually see Tyrion uncertain.
Yeah, he's the kind of person that has the answer to everything. So this was like a really, really sad, really great moment between two fan favorite characters.
So Jaime enters the city, as do Arya and the Hound, right before Daenerys attacks.
Yeah, we sort of see everybody getting ready for this epic battle. And I just have to say that the trailer for this episode gave probably the worst tease ever. This little moment here where he's like looking into the sky and he's like so surprised by what he sees because Daenerys entered from a viewpoint where it was sort of obscured by the sunlight. What? Why would he be surprised?
Yeah, it turns out there was no Drogon in armor. There were no 20 other dragons that Drogon had while he was, busy in Valyria. Although I'm really relieved that they didn't bring in more dragons because it would have just been way too convenient, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I was hoping for something a little more climactic than exactly what they were expecting.
Yeah, I was expecting that, the good guys would have a really clever plan, but their whole master plan was just for Daenerys to fly in with the sun behind her and then sneak behind enemy lines to blow up all the scorpions.
Yeah, and she has a very successful time in
really
this episode.
easy.
Yeah, because in the last episode, it was very easy for Euron to hit the dragon twice.
All of a sudden, it's like stormtroopers at the trigger now on the scorpions, and they can't hit anything.
It's very convenient that they were all of a sudden unable to aim at Daenerys. Mm-hmm. However, I thought that this was like a really, really epic scene where she was burning all the walls down around the city. She was destroying the fleet, and it was looking really, really good for Dany.
That looked fantastic, yeah.
So the Golden Company's role in this season was sort of hyped up as being maybe a little more climactic than what it turned out to be.
Well, you know what? It's because they didn't bring those elephants. Could have been all completely different if they had only brought some elephants.
Well, those elephants would have been toasty. They would have been well done because Daenerys decimated them. They did not stand a chance. I don't even think that Harry Strickland had one line in this season. And we were like really pumped up for the fact that the Golden Company was here and that they were going to be fighting for King's Landing. And it was literally like dominoes.
They completely destroyed as the Northern Army and some surviving Dothraki, who I didn't realize that some of the Dothraki had survived, and the Unsullied, of course, all charged in.
I feel like that's another sort of plot point in this season that they started and then just cut prematurely. The Golden Company is just like a small example of that being a recurring theme throughout this season.
Yeah, this season definitely started to feel a little bit rushed, especially for our next moment. So, just as everyone thinks they're saved by the bells, Daenerys goes full Mad Queen.
Yeah, and this is a phenomenally acted scene by Emilia Clarke. I thought that just her physicality, her facial expressions really conveyed that sense of bubbling anger within her that I think we all knew was there, but we didn't think that it would come out in this way. This was just a real plot twist.
To be honest, I felt like it happened too fast. It felt almost contrived. I found it hard to believe that Daenerys would all of a sudden turn against all these innocent people and burn down her own future city.
Yeah, I think the coin finally landed for Daenerys, But I think that a lot of people are sort of arguing between whether or not the series set her up as a Mad Queen or they set her up as a tragic hero. And I don't know. I don't really feel satisfied with the conclusion that she's just completely bad and completely, an irredeemable character, because Daenerys has always been a sympathetic character, somebody that we've rooted for a long time. And I think that it might be different in the books. We see more of, that side of her, but she saved so many people and she was a good person. So it feels like very, very premature to just sort of turn her because, Jon denied her.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I think it felt a little bit rushed, her descent into madness, personally.
Well, I think that another theme in this final season is being rushed, I think that the creators wanted to end the series on, a high note and not drag it out. But then again, we have 6 episodes and everything is happening so fast. Yeah. They cut the Night King off at the 3rd episode of this season. Like, it's just so frustrating to watch.
So what do you think made Daenerys decide to burn down King's Landing and attack the Red Keep?
I mean, I think that this season has been really, really tough on her, and she's lost a lot of people. The theme of the walls are closing in on her. I don't know what the, pushing moment was. Was
it just to make Cersei watch as she lost everything? Did she see the Red Keep and was she reminded of, the home that she had lost? And also, what did all those poor people running around through the streets have to do with it?
Yeah, I think that was like a really tragic moment. And I think that when she sort of had that turn and she started burning down the city, it really made me upset. Like my heart sank.
It made me sad. I was
Yeah.
less angry than just really sad that
Yeah, I
Daenerys
had like tears
gone
in my
down this
eyes.
path.
And you know what? The argument that it was to make Cersei watch her city burn, Cersei doesn't care about the people of King's Landing. She only cares about herself. She only cares about her baby. She only cares about power. So I don't buy that. I'm sorry. So then we have Grey Worm following Daenerys' lead, and I don't think that this was like a character plot twist that anybody didn't expect. Grey Worm had no fear before he met Missandei, and now that she's gone, he's just kind of like, well, I don't care. You know, she was his reason for living, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's also a character who's lost a lot and been pushed to the brink.
Yeah, there's
But
definitely-
it was still sad to see him go.
Yeah, but there's
think.
definitely that parallel between he and Daenerys, and I think that that's like a really, really interesting moment in this episode, that they're both sort of delving into that madness full force.
Meanwhile, Cersei is watching from on high while Jaime desperately tries to get to her, and hey, coincidence, gets who he runs into. The other guy who wants to be Cersei's boyfriend.
Yeah, I feel like this is like the Cleganebowl of the Lannister family. Like, who asked for this moment?
To be honest, it felt a little fan servicey to me. It felt a little contrived. I mean, what's the coincidence they would both wash up, that Euron would wash up on the same beach that Jaime Lannister is walking through?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I really didn't understand the purpose of this. I
Yeah.
mean, like, I guess it was to seal Jaime's fate so that no matter what he did, he would ultimately die. But it just felt like a really, really weird, convenient
It
kind
felt
of...
like a stretch. And to be honest, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I also felt a little bit like that about Cleganebowl. It all felt a little bit too much like what we were expecting. You know, Game of Thrones is really good at subverting our expectations, you know, doing some bait and switch. And this felt like, we, the people, had decided that Cleganebowl had to happen, and so the showrunners had to use it.
Yeah, I feel like this season is giving us all of like the moments that we wanted, but we didn't really need. Like they were like, you know what? Let's make Dany absolutely insane, which people were kind of like, about, and let's give them Cleganebowl. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that just seemed like so unnecessary.
Yeah.
I just think that the funniest moment in this episode by far was when Qyburn was like, you must respect your queen, and the mountain just smashes him.
I don't gotta do anything.
Yeah, that was like definitely an
What
epic
do you think
death.
about the moment between Arya and the Hound beforehand, where the Hound looks at her and says, you know, you don't want to become me, and Arya's like, yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know. I feel like he's always kind of taken on the role of a parental figure for her, and I think that it was very much a sweet moment between two characters who shared a lot of love throughout the series. I think it was kind of uncharacteristic of Arya to just be like, okay, you know, she's not afraid of death. That's not her whole
that's
purpose
true.
is revenge. So it seemed a little bit out of character.
She's not afraid of death, but maybe she is afraid of becoming, you know, the Hound. However, also for me, it felt a little bit rushed. You know, she traveled, they must have been on horseback for weeks at least. She had a lot of time to think about that. And then the Mountain's like, oh, hey, maybe this is a bad idea. And all of a sudden, Arya's like, oh yeah, I never thought of this. You're right.
I mean, to be fair, I don't think that maybe she could have anticipated the scale of this war and how people would be burning in the streets, and that the castle could just potentially fall on her, and that's how she would be remembered. That's how she would die. You know, I think she deserves a little more of an epic death, and I'm glad that she didn't.
I don't think she
follow
deserves
the
a
Hound.
death at all. I think she deserves to live.
Well, I mean, it's Game of Thrones. Like, people are dying left and right. Like, who did we lose in this episode? We lost the Hound.
lost
We lost the
Varys.
Mountain. We lost Varys. Who else did we lose?
We lost Qyburn.
Qyburn. I mean,
And of course, we also lost Jaime and Cersei.
now this death was so frustrating to me, okay? Cersei has been, like, this is like equal to the Night King's death. It seems so premature. Cersei deserved to have her head chopped off her body or a dragon chomp her like a cracker. Like, I'm sorry, this seemed like really, really too easy of a death for her.
So I actually didn't mind this death. I felt that at this point, Cersei had become small potatoes. I was so shocked by what Daenerys had done that I didn't really care how Cersei died. I felt like, you know, maybe it wasn't the death that Cersei deserved because it was so easy, but I felt like maybe it was the death that Jaime deserved. He got to go out in the arms of the woman he loved.
Let's talk about Jaime for a second here, because Jaime, over the past, 3 or 4 seasons, he's had this incredible redemption arc wherein he becomes this man who, his moral compass is starting to guide him. And then all of a sudden, he's just like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go kiss my sister goodbye. Like, it just seems so weird. And then it kind of nullifies the whole Brienne sex scene. Like, what was the point of that?
I think it shows that you can't push a kid out of a window and then just bounce back.
I don't know. I feel like it was just like such an anticlimactic ending. And there was the perfect scene where they were standing in the courtyard where they stood in last season, and he was standing on the fingers, she was standing on the neck. It was this big, foreshadowing that he would be the one to kill her by strangulation. And then, they're hugging and they're like, I love you so much. Like, what? Come on.
I definitely thought he was going to kill her for a moment there, but you know what? I'm satisfied by the way they went out.
Well, agree to disagree.
Yeah.
It was kind of frustrating that we never got to see a shot of Daenerys while she was burning down King's Landing.
Agreed.
And that's something that I kind of missed in this episode.
I agree. I would have liked to kind of, be with Daenerys more while she had that descent into madness. Otherwise, seen from outside, it seemed sudden and difficult to fully understand.
Yeah, and we had that amazing scene where she was kind of, everything was finally settled and the bells were ringing and she just lost her mind. And it was like we don't see her again in the episode. And I feel like this is like the defining moment of her character, and it's just, she's absent.
Meanwhile, on the ground, Arya's just trying to survive, and there were actually a few moments when I thought Arya was gonna die.
There were several moments wherein her fate was kind of, up in the air. I felt like it was like a little bit cheap to have like several moments where we're like, did she die? Did she not die? And then she always kind of comes back.
Kind of 2 or 3 fake outs, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
But, and then out of nowhere, Shadowfax!
Shadowfax!
So what do we make of this white horse surviving all the chaos? Some people have pointed to biblical parallels, the pale horse ridden by death. Other people have theorized that maybe it's actually Bran who walked into a horse and did something useful with his walking powers for the first time in many, many seasons.
Very interesting.
Instead of just walking into a bird and floating around and having a look, oh yeah, that's what's going on, he actually intervened, which would be kind of cool, I think.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. Yeah, just to sort of bring it back to that biblical reference, when she's getting on that horse and she's riding out of King's Landing, I think a lot of people are getting hung up on the Melisandre prophecy that she would shed brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes. A lot of people assumed that Cersei would be the green eyes in that equation. Now people have sort of switched their focus for it to be Dany.
I don't think that Arya's going to get the Night King and Daenerys. I think she may well play a key role. My personal bet is that Jon is going to have to kill Daenerys.
Yeah.
I think he's going to shove his sword right through her heart, just like Azor Ahai did.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a prophecy that will hopefully reappear in the final episode. It's crazy to think that the final episode is next week. I don't really see how one final episode would be able to wrap up all these different storylines in a satisfying way.
Yeah, I think we need and deserve at least a 3-hour finale.
Yeah, more than 3 hours. We deserve another season.
One more season. I guess the moral of the story is that the real enemies are the friends we make along the way.
And with that, goodbye. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below, and we'll see you next week for our final Game of Thrones ever episode breakdown. And see you then. Bye.
Bye.